Well, thank you for joining us, Bruce. I'd like you to start off by saying and spelling your first and last name for us.
My name is Bruce Coen. Bruce is in Bruce Springsteen, B-R-U-C-E. And my last name is somewhat of a different spelling. Most people think that it's C-O-H-E-N. Mine is spelled C-O-E-N.
Okay. And tell me about your last name and how that
Well,
came about.
it wasn't my wife, who's a genealogist, and with everything else she's mainly a writer, but she also does genealogy, and she researched my family. And my ancestors had a different last name, as most people who live in the States were all immigrants, basically.
Right.
And so my heritage goes all the way back to Eastern Europe and parts of Western Europe. And so they all came over to Ellis Island, all had different last names that were very hard to spell or pronounce. So Coen was a name given out. And then when New York City started getting influx with Coen, C-O-H-E-Ns, to differentiate, some Coens dropped the H.
Oh.
So because there were a lot of my ancestors went into textiles, went into those type of businesses, and there were a lot of, in that district, there were a lot of Coens. So again, to differentiate, they dropped the H.
Gotcha. So tell me about where you grew up and what that was like.
I grew up just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and an interesting suburb called West Roxbury. Now, most people who are familiar with Boston, Mass, or probably have heard of Roxbury, which is a little different from my area. That's mainly populated by African American. My area was Irish Catholic, which I am not. You probably can gather from my last name that I'm of Jewish heritage.
Right.
And I explained the East and Western European connection. And so it was Irish Catholic. All my friends were McCarthy's and Sullivans, and but we all got along. I really remember my childhood as being carefree and full of fun, and it was a time when parents weren't so concerned about playing outdoors. I mean, during the summer days or off school days, there was a group of us pretty much within the same age range, and we always were outdoors playing.
Yeah, those were the good old days.
Oh, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And it was great. It really developed a sense of community, and I still think of those friendships, though I have to say I'm not connected to those people. I could probably reach out on Facebook. If Facebook, you can reach out to everybody nowadays.
You can.
But, and I hear about them now and then.
Whenever you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was a child, what did I want to be? Happy?
That's good.
I don't know. I guess when I got into high school, and I wanted to work. Well, in high school, I joined the Big Brothers Big Sisters Association, and I became a big brother. And I really liked working with kids. And I knew that I wanted to be a father someday. I knew that I wanted to get married eventually, if that's the way my life went, and had a family. But I got involved in acting when I was 9, 10 years old.
Okay, tell me about that.
Summer camp, all boys camp. We always did 1 or 2 theater productions during the summer, and we did. My very first production was Shakespeare's As You Like It, and because it was an all-male camp, summer camp, I played a female role. I played a chambermaid. And getting on stage and hearing people hoot and holler and clap, and I just got bit immediately. And then from there, during the school year, I would attend classes with the Boston Children's Theater, which is a highly reputable and sought after children's theater in the country. It's very up there in the ranks. And we had an auditorium that sat, I don't know, like close to 1,000 seats with a balcony and huge downstairs. And when I was 15, 16 years old, I got cast in Aladdin in His Magic Lamp as Aladdin.
Oh, wow.
And so I was performing in front of, huge number of kids, and they just, loved it and ate it up.
And you never got nervous?
Yeah, I just still get,
You still get nervous?
I still get butterflies. And you'll hear this from a lot of actors, that professional actors, that you use that nervousness, energy, because really it is energy, and use that energy in your performance. Whether you're playing a nervous character or not, you still use that. It's really built up energy, and you just use that energy in your performance, which I learned to harness, as I grew older. But when I was a kid, it was all about just hearing that audience response, and you just get hooked into that. But not only that, not just the recognition, but the idea of being somebody else, and being in somebody else's shoes, so to speak, being in somebody else's interior and exterior, being in their soul, having to try to figure out what they're going through, and to try to relate it to your own personal life.
I know you've been an actor for many, many years.
Right.
What's been your favorite role to date?
Oh, to date. I'd have to say that there was a play written called Visiting Mr. Green, which I actually directed here in Lafayette. When I lived in California, I performed this character, and at the time I was in my 50s. The character was 86. So whenever you take on a character that's either completely different from you, or chronologically, age-wise or whatever, different from you, then you have to, in your mind, you have to come up with some kind of connection. So I took my cues for that character from my grandfather and my father, because the character was born and raised in New York City, but from direct descendant of parents that came from the old, as they call the old country. So he was Jewish, he was, he was New York, he was very orthodox in his learnings and his teaching, his daily routine of praying. They call it davening. And so I had to play an 86-year-old. I grew a beard, and I whitened my hair and my beard, and I kind of walked stooped over and took the gait of what I envisioned my father and my grandfather mainly, because I remember him being older when I was young, in the 70s and 80s, and he was a true New Yorker. He thought, "Hey, Brucey, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Hey, come over here, sit on my lap," And so I took that, thought about him very distinctly, and then took my leads and my cues for that character from him and from my father as well.
So, what brought you from Boston all the way to Louisiana, or what happened?
You want to hear
in
the whole
between?
story?
I would love to hear the whole story.
It's not a long story, but basically, when I was in college, I attended college in New England for a period of time, and met a woman up there, and we got involved, and she moved out to California after she graduated, and then I stayed for another 6-8 months, developed savings, and then I moved out there. And so I was about 79, I moved out to California, And I stayed there for many years, and that relationship turned into just a friendly relationship. And so I was kind of just working and trying to make it as an actor out in LA in the 80s.
Yeah.
Which was, at that time, it was a lot different in regards to casting. And casting still is a little bit of, pretty boy, pretty girl. And you'll see that still. But back then it was very strong. Lead was usually pretty boy, pretty girl. And I don't really fit that mold. But I'm a character actor, which means I can do different characters. And comedy was my strong suit because I did a lot of theater. I mean, I must have acted in every stage from LA all the way down to San Diego. And which was good because I was able to develop my craft. But when I was in California, at the time, 1985 is when I met my wife to be, and immediately fell in love with her, and we got married, and she's originally from New Orleans born and raised, but moves around the country a little bit with her family. She was in her senior year in high school. She was a congressional page in D.C. But like I said, we met in California, and then we stayed out there for a while, and got married and had our first son. I have two boys. Had our first son out there, and lived out there about a year or so after he was born, and then it was just time to make a change, so we decided to move to New Orleans. Was there for about 5 years. Moved to Baton Rouge. Was there for about 5 years, and moved back to California. Was there for about 4 years, and then landed in Lafayette. And the reason people ask, well, why did you move around so much, was my wife at that time was a newspaper editor. She was a journalist, newspaper journalist from the beginning. She went to LSU, and she was editor of the Reveille, which is their newspaper. And so always wanted to be a journalist. And so she got into being editorial. And it's not uncommon to go from paper to paper. So that's what brought us back to Lafayette. And then a few years after that, she decided to go freelance, and that's what she's been doing ever since. But we've been here going on, August will be 14 years.
Wow. And I know that, moving from, New York, Boston, that area, to California, then to Louisiana, now we've got some great food. So was that a culture shock for you to come?
No, I've never, people always ask me that, because you moved around a lot. How did you adjust? I see myself as a pretty adjustable person. So what I do is that I, do some research ahead of time. I find out what's happening in that scene culturally, because I'm very, very much, as a performer, I'm not just into acting. I'm into the entire spectrum of the arts. And because I teach as well, I teach theater, but I am active in all forms of the arts, and appreciate
Definitely.
all forms of the art because it's self-expression. Sometimes group expression, but mainly self-expression.
So tell me about your teaching career and how that came to be.
I just always loved being with kids, and for a while I was a preschool teacher, and just loved being with, I taught a lot of 3 or 4 year olds. Just loved their energy, and you have to understand that energy because they tend to have the concentration of a small gnat at that age. I mean, they're mature, and that matures with them, but you just have to understand that. If you understand that as a teacher, then you just make sure that you have a lot of places for them to play and to learn. See, for me, teaching is all about opportunity. Give a child an opportunity. Let them find out what they're passionate about. And they can do that at a young age. If they find something that they're passionate about at a young age, man, they'll take that to the moon and back. Because they're open to it. As we grow older, we sometimes become more closed off, unfortunately. But at a young age, if we're open to whatever our passion is, or passions, then, you know, it allows you to explore yourself as who you are, and to accept yourself as who you are, and respect yourself. Therefore, you can go out into the world and be able to accept others and respect others as well. But it starts with you.
You mentioned growing up when you were in high school that you were a big brother.
Yeah.
And there is a Big Brothers Big Sisters group here in Acadiana.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other groups that help the youth. Are you involved with any nonprofits?
Yes, in fact, I am involved with Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Oh, great.
They do one of their huge fundraisers every year is a murder mystery dinner theater. And we have one coming up the first weekend in August.
Great. And you perform in that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's just a fun thing for me to do. I'm also involved in a local murder mystery dinner theater group called The Usual Suspects. And we perform here in town every couple of months, where the guests come in and there's between 6 to 8 suspects, and the murder's already taken place. We get up, we talk about our connection. Each one gets up and says a few words about their connection to the deceased, and we don't even know who the killer is. We go in, and then there's a facilitator, and then we go around the tables and we get investigated and questioned, and that's the part that I just absolutely love, because that's unscripted. That's totally improv. You stay in character. Sometimes I have to do characters with an accent. Like, I'm from Ireland. My name is Bruce O'Shaughnessy, and I'm from Ireland. Sometimes I have to be from Germany. The beer you drink here, it tastes like water. So, I love doing the accents, but I love just doing the characters. And it's great because of the improv. And also, for acting as a performer, you really need those improv skills.
Definitely. Well, one of the things that you do here at AOC, you've been doing it for several months now, is you help us with our newspaper program. So thank you so much for your time and your talent, because we have a great deal of listeners that enjoy listening to the news every day. So thank you for reading the paper for that. And I wanted to ask you about that. Why are you committed to helping AOC with that newspaper program?
Well, it just to help a population that needs to know what's happening in the news, but are visually impaired or don't get the newspaper. And people need to know. They need to know what's going on in the world, truthfully, what's going on in the world, not a skewered opinion, but just the facts. What is happening around the world? Oh, not only the world, but I mean, we always start with the local news and how it's going to affect them. So I want them to know that this is happening now, and this may or may not affect you, but here's the information. You deal with it however you wish, but also it helps me as a performer because I have to. I feel like I want to perform when I read the news. Sure. I give it a little bit of, sometimes give it character.
And we love that.
Yeah, and sometimes I make little quips. I try not to, I
Yeah.
I
You have to stay neutral.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have to stay neutral. You know, you don't want to be
But
opinionated.
if it's regarding baseball, you can give a shout out to the Astros or the Cubs.
Not that,
anytime you
no,
want.
no, the Red Sox. Come on now. have to be a hometown player.
All right. Love it.
Have to
Love
be a
it.
hometown player.
Well, in talking about acting, I'm sure that throughout the course of your life, you've been given many roles or opportunities to be in a play or commercials or movies. Have you ever turned down a role and regretted it?
No, I've never turned down a role. I have to say that recently, I'm thinking more and more about choices that I make in regards to either auditioning or casting. Moral obligations, like my personal viewpoint.
Right.
I feel as a performer, you know, I can go ahead again and transform into maybe somebody that I'm not, or think like or say words that I wouldn't personally say, or
Right.
give out opinions. And I've done a couple of those, and I'm thinking more and more about, you know, my moral obligations.
Right.
But yeah, I'm still with my film career. I still feel that I'm at a point in my career, somewhat near the beginning, though I've been doing a lot of work lately, that I need to do my thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I get cast in a project, maybe I don't specifically agree with morally, that, you know, if it's not going to put me in a specific way in people's minds, then it's okay for right now.
Right.
But I think eventually, and when I get to a point when I'm working, and I just want to be a working actor. I mean, I don't want the fame and fortune. Well, I would like the fortune, but I don't want. I'm not particularly going after fame. I'm going after my love and passion for performance.
And that shines through because you do have a wonderful personality, and I think
Oh, thank you.
you're the kind of person that doesn't meet a stranger. You're very helpful, and you've got a very natural way about you that's very charismatic. So.
Well, thank you, and I think that obviously has a lot to do with my choice in life of being an actor. Because as an actor, you really have to be open and vulnerable.
Right. Well, you mentioned fame and fortune earlier, and not so much focusing on fame, but fortune. Let's talk about that. If you won the lottery, what would you do with the money?
Pay off all the debt that we currently have occurred, pay off the mortgage, you know, fix the fixings that need to be fixed in the house.
Okay. You wouldn't buy a new house?
No, I really like the house I'm in right now. We really like our house a lot, but it does need some repairs. So take care of all that, maybe even extend it a little bit, you know, add on, make it even more so. And not be have to be at a point where we are always kind of considering where the income's coming from.
Right.
My wife and I are both contract for hire.
Right. Right.
Being an actor, that's what I am, contract for hire. My wife is a freelance writer, so she's contract for hire. So, you know, our income is not as steady right now as it is. I'm 65, so I'm collecting Social Security, so that helps out. But again, it's not steady income. But so it would be nice. I would think that if it was in the millions and millions.
Let's talk millions and millions. We
Oh,
could travel
millions
the
and
world.
millions.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something that I absolutely want to do. My son recently got married, and on their honeymoon, they went to Paris, and they went to Nice, and they went to Italy, and I would just love to not have to worry about money at all and just
Right.
travel, just go places where nobody goes to and
Yeah.
experience the culture and the diversity that we have on this planet. It's incredible when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
The diversity, the way people live and the way people live out their lives and the things that they do and how they survive.
Well, in speaking of people and different walks of life, if you could spend one day in someone else's shoes, who would it be and why?
That's a good one. I mean, there's a couple of people I really admired. When I was younger, and I still do, I admired John Lennon.
Yeah.
Because he understood that the position he was in, he could at least, if not make major changes, he could at least start the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there were other artists and musicians who were in that position, like Bruce Springsteen.
Right.
Those are the kind of people that I aspire to be,
Mm-hmm.
that I look up to, because they understand that their passion and their ability to be incredible songwriters and musicians or performers, and I'm a performer in the same vein,
Mm-hmm.
that they can, with the money that they've made in their life, that they can use that, or the fame that they've created in their life, they can use that to make changes happen.
Sure.
Good, positive changes
Mm-hmm.
for everybody.
Well, you mentioned two famous musicians, Bruce Springsteen and John Lennon. Who are some of your other favorite musicians, or people to listen to just for fun, for music?
Well, if I had to pin it down to a specific music genre, it would be the blues. I've always been a big fan, but I love Eric Clapton.
Mm-hmm.
Just incredible guitar player. It's just so many people that I listen to all types of music. Even music that I may not really admire as much, but listen to just to try to understand what they're trying to say, or where their passion is coming from, or their perspective. You really need to open yourself up to all perspectives. But I love the blues. People think of it as just kind of one style, but it really isn't. There's many different styles.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great radio show here on Fridays at KRVS called the Blues Box. It's 4 hours of just blues, and if you listen to that show, you'll just one time you'll see how wide a variety blues encompasses. It's really one of the few true American art forms.
It is. And speaking of art forms, as an actor, I'm very curious to know. I know it would be hard to narrow it down to just one. So if I could ask you, what would be your top 5 favorite movies of all time? What would it be? What would they be?
Well, the first one that sticks out in my mind is not one that people might know, is Harold and Maude.
Okay.
Do you know that one?
I don't.
Check it out.
Okay.
Harold and Maude.
Okay.
Absolutely for sure. American Graffiti,
Oh, yeah.
another one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to say top 5. So Animal House
Okay.
for comedy, and Caddyshack. You can kind of put those two together
Sure.
as one. 2 more. I know I love so many movies. I'm a big movie guy. I watch a lot of movies.
Who is some of your favorite directors?
Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg. I like the indies, the independent, the what they call indie film. Jim Jarmusch. I don't know if he's familiar to you, but he's done a lot of really interesting work. I like people who just, you know, I know it's a overwrought cliche thinking out of the box, but I really like stories. The story is everything. Story is everything. As an actor, if I didn't have words, if I didn't have a story, I wouldn't have a job. Yeah. You know, that's why I absolutely, undoubtedly respect my wife as a writer and what she does and how she's able to express herself through words. So I have, you know, directors who can write as well. You know, one new aspect of that on the scene is Greta Gerwig. She wrote and directed Lady Bird, that was nominated for Best Picture. But she was an actress herself at first, and then she started writing. Another favorite movie of mine that came out last year was The Big Sick, which was a smaller film in terms of being more or less independent. But the thing I really like about films like that is that the performance, the acting in it is real true. It's really, really, it's very true. Another one in 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Minnesota. The acting, the performance, I really watch performance when I watch a film. And the camera, when you're in performance, the camera is the audience. Whereas on, you know, in the stage performance, you have a live audience. And to me, performance is performance. Doesn't matter if you're in front of the camera or on stage. But when you're in front of the camera as a performer, and notice that I say performer rather than actor, because I really think, in my mind, there's a big difference. You know, I think some people think, when they think of acting, they think, well, I'm going to go to the potty now. You know, I mean, that's an exaggeration. But you may do that stylized on stage, even in front of the camera, but what really rings true in front of the camera is a sponge that soaks up every truth that's on your face, every aspect. It's really is looking into the eyes of your soul, you know, if you want to get philosophical about it. But it just all you have to do when you're on camera and also on stage is just be the character. Just try to get into the head and the mindset of who your character is and just let it be. And there's an expression we use that if you feel the emotion, if you truly feel the emotion that the character is going through, whatever that is in that moment, your body will follow naturally. Think about it. When you're angry, when you're really angry, you feel tense.
Oh yeah.
Your body, I mean, your muscles tense up, your face, and then when you're happy, think about it. You're more relaxed. Yeah. Your muscles aren't tensed. Everything is flowing. And I mean, there's a huge other rainbow of emotions that we go through. But if you really truly feel the emotion that character is going through, your mannerisms, your gestures, the way your body looks, the way your face looks, will absolutely naturally follow. You don't even have to think about it. In fact, you shouldn't have to think about it. Right. You just let the emotion take over with the lines and the character, and everything else follows.
Bruce, where do you see yourself in 10 years from now?
working actor. I mean, having built a pretty big resume and credit, and just being able to be at a point where I can pick and choose what projects I want to be in, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Right now, I can't be too picky,
Right.
because I'm building my resume as far as film goes. I have a massive resume as far as theater goes, but trying to open up this film career. So I want to get as many credits as possible, because when it comes down to casting, a lot of times, if I'm up for the final casting role or casting decision, and there's another guy, and the two of us are neck to neck, well, what may happen is that the casting director, producer, director, they'll sit down with the resumes, and they'll look at mine, and they'll say, well, Bruce has got 20 film credits. This guy's got 2.
Yeah.
He's going to be more comfortable in front of the camera. Let's
Right.
go with Bruce. So, I mean, that obviously plays to my advantage to have a
Sure.
resume that has quite a few credits on it. And so that's all. In 10 years, I want to be. I'll be in my 70s, but I don't think age matters. I think yeah. I mean, I can't play a 20-year-old, but I mean, it does in that respect. But I hope to be just going from project to project.
Well, let's narrow down the time frame. We're halfway through the year now. What are you looking forward to for the rest of 2018?
Continuing audition, continuing building up my film career, and trying to stay happy and active. About a year and a half ago, I was diagnosed with mild Parkinson's, or early onset Parkinson's. So that's something that I'm probably going to have to contend with, because it's a progressive disorder. So that's something I will have to contend with. But exercise and medication is, my 2 main ingredients to quell the effects right now. So, but I do know what's potentially down the road. But there's a tremendous amount of research going on, so I'm hopeful.
If you could describe yourself in 3 words, what would they be?
Hopeful, striving to be enlightened. I know that's more than one word.
That's okay.
Striving to be enlightened, and friendly.
How do you want to be remembered?
For my work, and just pretty much as a overall pretty good guy. One that respected others and was kind to others, and didn't walk around with being Mr. Grinch every day. But we all go through that, right? And we all have periods of that. We're human, and that's great. That's what, actually, as an actor, that's fantastic, is to play on those imperfections. I'd rather that than us all be the same or be perfect. That'd be boring. I really love the imperfections of life and of human nature, and a big observer of human nature.
Do you have any famous last words that you'd like to leave with the audience watching this interview?
Find out who you are, who you truly are. Open yourself up to who you truly are, and be that who you are. And don't let anybody tell you different. If you really truly believe that this is who you are, and you can't put it in one category. You are many, many things. Find out all the sides that you can, all the perspectives that you can. Keep yourself open, totally open to what life in the world has to offer, which is a tremendous amount. Don't ever feel disenchanted or alone, because really, I know it's not another cliche statement, but we really are all in this together.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bruce. That
You're
concludes
welcome.
our interview. Thank you.